Hi guys! Before we start learning with this new topic, subscribe po muna kayo and don't forget to click that bell button para laging updated sa mga latest kaganapan dito sa ating channel. Comment na rin kayo if you have requests or questions. Happy learning! Good day everyone! So as promised, dito na po yung ating ratio or rationalization sa binigay ko na 50 items na rad bio and rad protection practice test. So I hope may matutunan po kayo dito. Sige, so shall we start? So first question, which among the following is a monomer of carbohydrates? So when we say monomer, it refers to a building block. So just like the atom, which is the building block of the of matter, so monomer also is a building block of molecules or macromolecules, so building blocks. So for carbohydrates, the building block is saccharide, or specifically it is the monosaccharide. Okay, so this is the answer. So glycerol naman, so this is the monomer of lipids together with the fatty acids. So, yung ating monomer ng lipids are glycerol and fatty acids, and amino acids are the amino acids or amino acid is the monomer of proteins. Next, which among the following is short-lived? So, the red blood cell or the erythrocyte is around 120 days ang lifespan. The thrombocyte, which is the platelets, so the lifespan is about 9 to 12 days. So this is also the platelet. The leukocyte or the white blood cell has a lifespan of 13 to 20 days. So therefore, the short-lived is the platelet or the thrombocytes. Next, a stage of radiolysis of water where ionization occurs, that is the physical stage. So this is the first stage, followed by the second, the third stage, and the fourth stage of radiolysis of water. So physical stage, this is where ionization occurs, while the physicochemical stage, this is where the free radicals are formed. So free radicals are formed. And then sa chemical stage, the free radicals interact with, so the free radicals, sorry, hindi na magkasya. So the free radicals interact with the different atoms in the body. And after the free radicals interact with the different atoms in the body, so the biological stage will happen where there is a formation of biological effects due to the interaction of the free radicals to our atoms in the body. Okay, so number 4, which of the following are characteristics of free radicals? So, uncharged molecule, so correct. So, lahat ng 1, tama. Contain a single unpaired electron in the outermost shell. So, correct also. So, lahat ng may 2, tama. So, ito yung eliminate natin. So, ito yun lang yung dalawa yung ating choices. So, unstable. Yes, unstable siya. So, kaya nga unpaired electron. So, correct. So, 1, 2, 3, this is wrong. So, therefore, ito na yung ating tama. So, also, free radicals contain excess energy, which can be transferred to other molecules or atoms in the body, which can lead to biological effects. So, all of this are the characteristics of free radicals. Okay? So, next, number 5. So the benefits versus risk is under what basic principles of radiation protection? So that is under the justification of practices. So there are 3 basic principles of radiation protection. We have justification of practices, optimization of protection, and those limits. So ALARA is under the optimization of protection. Also under ALARA is our cardinal principle. So iba din yung ating basic principles sa ating cardinal principles. So yung ating cardinal principles, so yun yung ating distance, time, and shielding. So sa three basic principles, benefits versus risk refers to the justification of practices, meaning there shall be no radiation radiation procedures that should take place if it is not justified. So kailangan lahat ng procedures na gagawin, dapat it should be justified and dapat ma-outweigh ng benefits yung risk. So, alam naman natin na when we are exposed to radiation, there is always a risk and therefore, during medical radiography, so dapat mas marami ang benefits kesa sa risks. The most important consideration in reducing patient dose is to maximize distance. Okay? So maximize distance. So i-follow natin yung recommended na SID. Like for vertical radiography, we have 72 inches and then for tabletop, we have 100 centimeters or 1 meter. So, ang time should be minimized. And then shielding should also be maximized. So, sa shielding kasi, kahit nag-shield tayo, yes, ma-reduce ang patient dose, pero doon lang sa area of interest. So, pwede pa rin ma-expose yung ibang area na hindi natabunan ng shielding. Pero with distance, so kasama na lahat. So, marireduce na rin yung ibang parts ng patient na pwedeng ma-expose sa radiation. So, it also follows the inverse square law, di ba? When the distance is doubled, the intensity will will decrease by a factor of 4. And when the distance is halved, the intensity will increase by a factor of 4. So, ibig sabihin, kapag na-double yung distance, mas malayo siya, yung intensity ng radiation will be 1/4 na lang. While if na-half yung distance, mas naging malapit siya sa ating object or sa patient, so yung ating intensity is magiging times 4. So, mag-i-increase siya by a factor of 4. Kaya, kaya to effectively reduce patient dose, it is better to use the SID. Maximize the SID. So next, the first recorded fatality due to radiation was Clarence Madison Daly, who was the assistant and friend of Thomas Alva Edison. So assistant niya si Clarence Madison Daly, and then during his experiments with fluoroscope, so yung kanyang patient, yung ginawa niyang patient model, si Clarence. And then later namatay siya because of radiation-induced malignancy. Ito, when a man has a mass of 75 kilograms on Earth, what will be its mass on the moon? So actually, this is a physics question na pasama lang. So, the mass is always constant. Kahit saan ka man makarating, kahit saan ka mapunta, your mass will always be the same. So, if you are 75 kilograms on Earth, sa moon, you will still be 75 kilograms. Ang nag-iiba lang is yung weight. So, weight is mass times the gravitational force. Okay, so if you are on the moon, your weight will decrease by 1/6. So, this is for weight. So, pero yung mass yung tinatanong, so 75 pa din yung ating mass. Next, being a radiation worker, the expected days of life lost is 12 days. So, 12 days lang siya based yan sa kay Busyong na book. So, 1 day, this is for airplane crash. So, nasa table siya. Actually, naka-table siya sa book ni Busyong. And then, 20 days for stroke. And 74 days for uh, death or life loss due to occupational accidents. So this means to say that safe pa din daw yung ating work as radiation worker because mababawasan lang yung life natin by about 12 days. Next, which among the following are macromolecules? So macromolecules meaning they are composed of uh, more than two, many molecules. So these are the lipids, proteins, carbohydrates, and nucleic acid. So one, this is two, three, four, and five. So water is not a macromolecule because it is only composed of hydrogen and oxygen. Okay, yung macromolecules, yung apat lang, lipids, proteins, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. And the organic molecules, these are molecules that contain carbon and are life-sustaining. These are the lipids. So, lahat ng may 2. So, lahat ng may 1, wala na. So, eliminate na tayo. So, then, proteins, correct. Lahat na may 3. Then, carbohydrates, correct. 2, 3, and 4. And nucleic acid is not an organic molecule. So, therefore, the correct answer is letter B. Lipids, proteins, carbohydrates are the organic molecules in the body. They contain carbon and they are life-sustaining. Next, the following are bases of DNA except. So, based sa isang video na nakita ko yung sa Amoeba Sisters, so the bases of DNA, so sabi niya is apples in the tree, cars in the garage. So apples in the tree, cars in the garage. So we have the adenine, the thymine, the cytosine, and the guanine. So meaning to say, uracil is not included in the basis of DNA. So sa RNA, so we have apples under, cars in the garage. So apples under the tree. So apples for adenine, then instead of thymine, walang thymine sa RNA. Instead, we have uracil. Then cytosine and guanine. So uracil is the base of the RNA. Next, they are the first line of defense or the guard cells. So these are the macrophages. So nagro-ronda yung macrophages to check if there are invaders. So yun yung ating main purpose ng macrophages. They are the first line of defense. They are scavengers which constantly move around to remove dead cells and foreign bodies. While the neutrophils, so kapag humingi ng backup si macrophages, pag hindi niya na kaya, so tinatawag niya si neutrophils. So second ito. While the dendritic cell, so they are only antigen presenting cell capable of stimulating the T cells. So they are antigen presenting cell. While the antigens, so these are specific substance in our immune system to attack particular type of diseases diseases or pathogens. Next, which of the following are the most radiosensitive phase of the cell cycle? So actually, may mali dito sa aking choices. So the most sensitive are the G1 phase, the M phase, and the G2 phase. So most radiosensitive is 1, 3, and 4. While ang late S phase, this is the most radio resistant. Okay? So the answer is 1, 3, and 4. So next, we also have which among the process of cell division takes time to finish. So yung mahabang phase is the prophase. So the correct answer is prophase. And the shortest is the anaphase. Number 16, the ultimate molecule that fuels the body is the glucose. So the correct answer is glucose. So glycerol is a monomer of fatty acids or monomer of lipids together with fatty acids. The saccharide is a monomer of carbohydrates, and glycogen is a polysaccharide of glucose that serves as a form of energy storage in animals, fungi, and bacteria. So for energy storage siya, ng animals, fungi, and bacteria. 17. Which of the following are examples of somatic cells? So there are two general categories of cells in the body. We have sex cells and the somatic cells. So sex cells include egg cell and sperm cell. The rest of the cells in the body are referred to as somatic cells. So therefore, the answer is 3 and 4. Which of the following undergo mitosis? So mitosis, muscle cell, and nerve cell. Because the sex cells, which are the sperm cell and egg cell, undergo meiosis. Genetic cells are referred to as, yes, haploid. So when we say haploid, they contain only one set of chromosome and then later, nagde-divide lang siya. Or the half of the chromosome comes from the mother and the half is from the father. So haploid lang siya. So when we say diploid naman, so it indicates that it contains two sets of chromosomes. So haploid, these are cells formed by the process of meiosis. While diploid cells, these are cells that undergo mitosis. Okay? So next, 20. What is the cause of death for CNS syndrome? So that is intracranial pressure. So vasculitis will lead to intracranial pressure, vasculitis, and meningitis will lead to intracranial pressure, and eventually the person will die because of the CNS syndrome. So the generalized infection is the cause of death for hematologic syndrome, while the damage to intestinal crypt cells is the cause of death for GI syndrome or gastrointestinal syndrome. So the hematologic, the GI, and the CNS syndrome that is under the acute radiation lethality. So these are the syndromes that are suffered by a person who has received a particular amount of high doses of radiation. Next, sensitivity is determined by which of the following? So functions, correct. Rate at which the cells mature in the organ, and the inherent radius sensitivity is also correct. So the answer is all are correct. So these are based sa law of Bergoni and Tribundao. So the more important the function is, the more sensitive they are to radiation. The faster the cells proliferate or the faster the cells multiply or divide, and also the faster the cells mature, the more sensitive they are to radiation. And also from the law of Bergoni and Trabundo, the younger the cells, the more sensitive they are to radiation. The more important their function is, the more sensitive they are to radiation. And also, there are cells that are inherently radiosensitive to radiosensitive, or there are cells that are inherently sensitive to radiation. So examples of cells that are inherently radiosensitive are lymphocyte, crypt cell, and erythroblast. So mga highly radiosensitive sila. While the osteoblast, so nasa middle lang siya. So immediately radiosensitive. And then meron tayong low radiosensitive. So nasa busyong din yan na ka-table yan siya. So except osteoblast. Next, 23. For radiation protection purposes, which dose response relationship is observed? So in radiation protection, we observe the linear non-threshold dose response relationship. So pag sinabi nating linear, that is the directly proportional. The higher the dose, the higher the expected effect. Non-threshold, there is no limit. So no matter how small the dose is, we can still expect an effect or a response. Okay? So linear, non-threshold. So the higher the dose, the higher the expected response. And no matter how small the dose is, we can still expect a response. So which of the following is not included in the physical factors affecting radio sensitivity? So that is the oxygen effect. So oxygen effect is nabilong siya sa biological factors. So meron tayong physical factors and we have biological factors. So under the biological factors, we have oxygen effect, we have gender, recovery, we have chemicals like radiosensitizers and radio protectors. While for physical factors affecting the radiosensitivity, we have the LET, the linear energy transfer, then we have the RBE, then we have the protraction and fractionation. Next, considered as dose modifier, that is an oxygen. This means that if we use oxygen or if there is a presence of oxygen, for example, during irradiation of a particular cell, so it becomes more sensitive. So based sa busyong din, so if the cell is irradiated in an aerobic state or an oxygenated state, so it becomes more sensitive. Mas madali siyang mag-react, mas sensitive siya sa radiation if there is a presence of oxygen during exposure or during irradiation. So next, what is the maximum value of RBE? So that is 3. Wala siyang unit. Then, minimum value niya can be below 1. So in diagnostic radiology, the value of RBE is 1. Okay, so diagnostic 1. So for therapeutic and other types of radiation, so the maximum value of RBE is 3. So in diagnostic radiology, the value of LET is 3 keV per micrometer. So LET ito. So ang question natin is RBE. Next, what happens to the oxygen enhancement ratio if LET is increased? So that is decrease. So they are inversely related. According kay Busyong again, the oxygen enhancement ratio is LET dependent and it is inversely related sa LET. So the OER, if there is a low LET or linear energy transfer, the oxygen enhancement ratio increases and vice versa. So the maximum value of OER, maximum value niya is 3. So actually, hindi naman tayo nag-compute niyan. Pero just in case, baka lumabas sa board exam. So malay natin. So the OER decreases to approximately 1 for high LET radiation. So kung mataas yung LET ng isang radiation, so the value of OER decreases for about a value of 1. Next, the following are examples of radiosensitizers except cysteine. So cysteine is an example of radio protectors. So radiosensitizers, these are chemicals that that increases the sensitivity of a structure of an atom of a tissue to radiation. So, mga radiosensitizer sila. Mas ini-enhance nila yung sensitivity ng isang structure or molecules or tissue sa radiation. So, meaning madali siyang mag-react if there is a presence of radiosensitizers. So, again, cysteine is a radioprotector. Next, which among the following are the effects of irradiation in macromolecules? So, in macromolecules, that is point mutation. Kasama niya yung main main chain scission and cross linking. So these are the three effects of irradiation in macromolecules: main chain scission, cross linking, and point mutation or point lesions. While the cell death, malignant disease, and genetic damage, these are the effects of radiations in DNA. So effects of radiation in DNA is cell death, malignant disease, and genetic damage. Next, it follows a linear non-threshold dose-response relationship. So that is cancer. So walang threshold. So kahit maliit lang na dose, if natsambahan ka, you can have cancer. And the higher the dose that you will receive, so there is also a higher possibility of having a cancer. While uh, cataract follows a non-linear threshold. So nasa busyong din ito non-linear threshold. Pasensya na po sa handwriting ko. Skin erythema follows a linear threshold. So, pag sinabing threshold, kailangan may abutin ka muna na certain value bago mag-occur yung cataract or skin erythema. For gonadal dysfunction, it follows a non-linear threshold. Next, what is the LD50-60 for humans? So, the LD50-60 for humans is 3.5 gray. So, that is a fixed value. 100 gray is the LD50-60 for cockroach. 2.5 gray is the LD50-60 for pig. And 2.8 gray is an LD50-60 for dogs. So this is for humans 3.5 gray. So when we say LD50-60, so LD stands for lethal dose, and 50-60 means that 50%, LD50-60 means that a lethal dose that will kill 50% of the population for about 60 days. So if, for example, if a particular population will be exposed to 3.5 gray, then after 60 days, so 50% of the population will die. Next, in vitro irradiation requires blank doses than in vivo to cause an effect. So if the the molecules or a tissue or substance is exposed in vitro, meaning outside the body, it requires higher dose. Pero pag sa loob ng katawan, in vivo, inside the body, so it will only require lower dose to cause an effect. So this means that the structures, the molecules, the tissues inside the body are more sensitive to radiation compared to when irradiated outside. Okay, so ibig sabihin, mas sensitive ang tissue or molecules or cells if inside the body. Pero pag nasa labas, it requires higher dose para mag-cause ng effect. 33, it is referred to as the clinical tolerance in radiation therapy, that is moist desquamation. So if moist desquamation occurs, that means that that is the pinaka matolerate na dose ng patient during radiation therapy. So acute radiation lethality follows a non-linear threshold dose response relationship. So non-linear threshold dose response relationship for acute radiation lethality. So those limits for radiation workers in the Philippines is still 20 millisievert per year. Pero pag hindi na-specify na Philippines, for example, the question will be those limits for radiation workers in millisievert per year, so 50. Pero dito sa Philippines, 20 pa yung ating dose limits, 20 millisievert per year. Next, 36. So during this period, the person is free of visible effects. So free of visible effects, that is latent stage. So based yan sa ating acute radiation syndrome or ARS. So first, so after receiving high doses of radiation, the person will suffer from prodromal stage. Then after a period of time, so mawawala lahat ng kanya mga signs and symptoms, free siya of visible effect, that is latent. Then later, if masyadong mataas yung na-receive niya, so pwede siyang mag-suffer from hematologic syndrome or hematologic stage. And then, worst, kapag masyadong mataas talaga, so pwede siyang mag-lead sa manifest illness or manifest stage. So those limit for radiation workers, skin and extremities. So radiation workers, tandaan, we are times 10 greater yung ating dose limits compare sa general public. So yung ating skin and extremities, that is 500. So for public, so 50 sila, so times 10 tayo, so 500. So yung 50 for annual dose limit, so annual dose limit or yung ating 50 millisievert per year. Pero again, dito sa Philippines, 20 lang tayo. Annual dose limit. 150 is the limit to the lens of the eyes. And 0.5 millisievert is the monthly dose limit for fetus. The next, the maximum permissible dose of a 20-year-old man is, so the formula for MPD or maximum permissible dose is 5, which is constant, times N, which refers to age, minus 18. So constant ang 5 and 18. So 5 times 20 minus 18. So this is 2 times 5. So the MPD of a 20-year-old man is 10. So the unit, so old unit pa siya, so 10 rem. So next, what is the cumulative dose limit for a 35-year-old man? So for a 35-year-old man, so the formula for cumulative dose, so cumulative dose is 35, age or N times 10. So N times 10. So we have 35 times 10, that is 350. The unit, so this is a new unit na. So we have here the millisievert. millisievert. That is 350 millisievert. So tandaan, pag cumulative dose limit, so millisievert, pag MPD or maximum permissible dose, REM. So what is the dose limit for the lens of the eyes for general public? So that is 15 millisievert. So pag radiation workers, times 10 tayo, so 150 tayo. Pero ang question is general public infrequent, so 15. Ang 150 millisievert, so yun nga, times 10 pag sa RadTech. Pag 5 millisievert, this is for pregnant worker within 9 months. So sa loob ng 9 months, dapat yung limit lang ng pregnant radiation worker, huwag susobra sa 5 millisievert. Student radiographers under the age of 18 may not receive more than 1 millisievert per year during the course of their educational activities. So yung ating student interns or student radtechs, they are considered general public frequent. So dahil lagi silang nasa department. So general public pa sila below the age of 18. Next, the following are taken into consideration when planning for shielding in an X-ray facility. So for calculating the shielding thickness, if we are going to put up an X-ray facility, so workload is considered. Use factor is also considered. So workload, ibig sabihin, ang dami ng patient na kinikater natin each day, ang dami ng exposures na ginagawa natin sa bawat araw or sa isang linggo. Use factor, so this is calculated for also for planning the shielding thickness. Use factor refers to parang ano siya, may mga constant value na binibigay yung mga medical physicists for walls, for ceilings, for primary barriers, for primary walls. So may mga hindi. May mga constant values sila na binibigay. For beam penetration, so yung taas ng ating KBP na laging ginagamit, kinoconsider din siya. So the higher the KBP, the thicker the shielding. So mas makapal yung shielding. Mas madami yung ating workload. So, mas madaming patient, mas madaming exposures or examinations performed, kailangan din ng makapal na shielding. For use factor naman, so halimbawa kung matagal na naka-on palagi yung ating X-ray machine, so kailangan din ng higher thickness or kailangan din ng mataas na shielding material or thicker shielding material. So, ang MAS, so this is not considered kasi hindi naman siya penetrating. So, MAS refers to dami ng X-rays, refers to intensity, exposure. So, yung control ng ating MAS is intensity, exposure, and number of X-rays. So, hindi siya kino-consider when planning for the thickness of the shielding to be employed in a facility. So, except MAS. 43, the current dose limit is 1 millisievert per week. So, mga constant value yan sila. The current dose limit is 1 millisievert per week. 44, the mean survival time for GI syndrome is about 4 to 10 days. Pag sinabing mean survival time, this is the time from the exposure and death. So, bago mamatay yung person exposed. So, mean survival time. So, ibig sabihin, if na-expose yung person, So within 4 to 10 days, so pwede siyang mamatay. And for 0 to 3, this is CNS syndrome. So, mas mataas yung doses na marireceive. So, pwede siyang mag-suffer from CNS syndrome and the mean survival time is only maximum of 3 days na pwedeng mamatay yung person exposed. And then 10 to 60 is sa hematologic. Nota is none of the above, or none of the given. 45. The minimum dose required for hematologic syndrome to occur is, so here for hematologic, 200 to 1,000 rad. Then for gastrointestinal, we have 10 to 50 gray, and the CNS is greater than 50 gray. So greater than 50 gray, this is CNS. And then yung ating GI is 10 to 50 gray, or this is 1,000 to 5,000 rad. Next, what is the minimum threshold dose for death to occur for a whole body exposure? So that is 200 rad. So death will occur if the person will be exposed to 200 rad whole body exposure. So 5 rad, it will result to chromosome aberration. So chromosome aberration. 10 rad will be gonadal dysfunction. And 25 rad is hematologic depression. So when only part of the body is irradiated compared with whole body irradiation, it requires a higher dose to produce a response. So if part lang ng body, so it requires higher dose para magkaroon ng response or ng effect. Pero pag whole body, it requires lower dose. So again, pag part lang, higher dose. Pag whole body, lower dose. 48, a type of switch used in fluoroscopy to remind the operator that a 5-minute time has elapsed. That is a dead man type switch. So usually in a single exposure sa fluoroscopy, it only allows sa limit natin 5 minutes lang per examination or per exposure. Then ulitin lang pag hindi pa tapos. So dead man type ang tawag because hindi siya gumagalaw ng sa sarili niya, hindi siya automatic. So you need to operate it manually. 49, Grenz rays are soft X-rays used as the treatment of choice before for skin diseases such as ringworm. So Grenz rays, these are low energy X-rays, soft X-rays, low energy X-rays. So that is 10 to 20 kVp. In mature female, this dose results to suppression or delay in menstrual period. So this is below 10 rad. So if a mature female, capable pa siya of getting pregnant, so less than 10 rad, if makareceive siya, pwedeng masuppress or madelay yung kanyang menstruation. So ito, may 51 na lang. This dose results to permanent sterility both sa male and female if makareceive sila ng 500 rad. So that is permanent sterility. Okay, so I hope you have learned something and I will continue the rationalization for 52 to 100. But of course, bago yan, upload ko na din yung 52 to 100 for your practice test again. Okay, so thank you everyone and have a nice day.